Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Thiago, this is Mel, and today we're going to talk to you a little bit about common pitfalls between designers and developers and how you can overcome them. So a little bit about me before we get started. I'm a developer at MYOB. I'm currently working on the expenses team. So we take care about small businesses, keeping track of their expenses, where the money is going, all of that stuff. And it says mobile developer there, but I've been doing a little bit of everything. Right now, I would say more of mobile, but not only that.
Yeah, and I'm Mel. I'm a UX designer in the same team, so working on small business expenses. Just wanted to highlight that we actually do work together. These are some of the things that we have produced in our time over the past couple of years at MYOB. And we wanted to highlight also who this talk is for.
So first of all, I think the main group here is cross-functional teams. So if you're working with people who have a different skill set, this will work for you. We're focusing on designer and developer, but you can insert names on the blank columns there, and it would work for BAs and QAs, whatever. It's just cross-platform. This is obviously useful for designers, developers, and people who work with them. It's also interesting for managers because, like, if you're planning software projects, you have to be aware of some of the things we're going to talk about in order to create an environment that fosters a better flow for your project. And finally, new people entering the industry. Like, we hope this would be a small glimpse into the life of teams with multiple skill sets, multiple backgrounds, and different ways of thinking.
And so why is this important? Well, obviously today we work together, and depending on how we work together is actually what we produce together. And that can be not just what we produce for our clients in terms of our software solutions, but also our working experience. And that's really, obviously, that's very important for all of us here. We would go to work and we do get paid, but there's other things that we want to gain from that. And that's why our working relationship is so valuable.
So without further ado, let's go into the actual pitfalls and how to overcome them. So before we start, these are things that we notice in our real life situation. So we'll try to bring some examples when we can remember them. But these are real things. It's not like theoretical, right?
Yeah, we're a little bit nervous, so please come along with us. And thanks to all the other MYOB people here tonight. So if you have a story that you'd love to share, please shout it out. So kicking it off, one of the things that is pretty common is that when you go to work as a designer, people think that you're a master at visuals. They think that you love the aesthetic, that you're completely focused on the pretty pictures and the pretty shiny things, and putting that on top, you're really happy to be a painter.
And that also happens on the developer side. So there is this view that developers are not very approachable. If they could, they would just be in a corner doing work by themselves. And, they're guided entirely by logic and reason. And humans are a nuisance. And, hopefully, there would be a way in the future that we can work without humans. Obviously, not true.
Yeah, and so I think what's been really interesting working in the industry is finding out that there isn't actually a robot behind the human face when I talk to a developer. Like, Thiago is a very approachable person, and he's very concerned about the human experience of work, not just in that working relationship, but in the customer outcomes, and it has a really good sense of the workflows that customers go through.
And on the developer side, I have made the mistake of stereotyping designers as well. And it's kind of a little embarrassing. So, I've been talking to designers about some feature, and I'm explaining the technical side, right? And the designer is just very polite, and he's nodding and going, yes, keep going. And I'm thinking he's not getting it, right? So I keep explaining and explaining and explaining. And eventually he goes like, I know this. I do have a technical background. I know what you're talking about. You can move on. So yes, I have been guilty of devsplaining. And so, and that could all be prevented if I had just thought that maybe just ask.
So stereotyping is an issue because we limit people to our view of them. And that means that could be in their capabilities, in their talent, in their contribution, and their interests as well. So how can we overcome those things? Well, first of all, we need to be aware that we might be stereotyping, and we need to be open to the possibility of that. So being open to learning and adjusting our view of the people that we're working with, no matter what role or title they have.
So basically, like finding their hidden strengths. Like, so if I'm talking to a designer, I kind of know where they're coming from, their background, their experience. And I know some of their skills, but I don't know all of them. So I think it's about probing and actively talking and trying to engage them in, team lunches, team events are really good for that kind of stuff. And trying to find those hidden strengths. Like, oh, this developer I was talking to is really good with CSS, so I don't really need to explain. Oh, sorry. The designer I was talking to is really strong with CSS, probably better than I am. I don't need to spend a lot of time explaining. One specific thing we do in our team, which I think is very positive, is encouraging involvement in each other's activities. So Mel has invited us to customer interviews, so she's talking to real clients about like their workflows and what's going on in the product, and we're sitting there and listening and going through the pain that the customer is going. Also workshops about like, let's try to figure out how this user flow would be in the app. And that's something that developers not always get involved in. So I think that really helps me see Mel's strengths. On the same token, we invite Mel to some of our technical talks, which, I don't know, are you getting anything out of them?
I'm getting a lot of technical terms. No, they really help us as designers see that, like I was saying before, developers do have quite a good perspective of the customer. They care about the outcomes, and if they're actively engaged in the work that they're doing, they want to learn more and more. So when they share their technical solutions, it often includes a customer perspective or lens to that. And that's been really valuable for me to see and witness in their environment. So it's, thanks, Thiago, for doing it.
You're welcome.
So this one's about complexity. So from a designer point of view, there's a lot of technical complexity at MYOB. That's in the fact that it is software, and that's just generally complex, but also in the legacy, and there's a lot of legacy.
Yes.
So sometimes I'll think, oh, look at that. That's just a simple thing to add into a page. Surely it'll take about 20 minutes. Like, that won't be an issue, and we'll get this solution really nicely finished. What was that?
It's just a button.
It's just a button. It's just a link. It's just another data field. It's really simple, isn't it?
Yeah, that's me on the other side. Oh my God, why is she saying this? Why do you hate me? Things, as Mel was saying, MYOB has a lot of legacy. So some of the software we was built 15 years ago, and you know that might be 15 centuries ago when it comes to technology, right? So something that is really looks very simple is actually very complicated. And that reaction of going, oh my God, and just lashing out no, we can't do that. That's really hard. It ends up happening quite often. And it's something that is a pitfall, because on the other side, the designer is going, I don't really know why this is so hard. It doesn't seem to be that complicated. So having the different views of complexity is something that hinders us in many ways. So on the one hand, the designer starts getting afraid to suggest things because they think, I'm going to get shut down. That's impossible. I'm not even going to bring it up. I'll just avoid the headache. And developers become defensive because of that legacy, right? And they just go, my default answer is no. You have to convince me to say yes. And that's pretty bad, right? I think we can all agree that it shouldn't be how teams work. So how have we worked around that?
Yeah, so I have learned that sometimes if I've got an idea in my head, I might shoot it down myself internally. And that's not, like Thiago said, not the best way to do things. So it's important to just suggest things out loud. And that is much easier in a safe team and a safe environment where you've had the experience of working together. And so this is something that I think you can progressively get towards. But it's important that you actually do give that idea a chance and give that discussion an opportunity to be had.
From the developer side, you just need to work on being less defensive and really explaining, like understanding why that thing is being asked in the first place. I think that makes a world of a difference. Like if you just, instead of saying this is too hard and I'm not even going to try to start explaining why this is too hard, it's just like, what are you trying to get out of this? Why? Like what benefit? You know, like to link back to Andrew's talk, like what benefit do you want to get out of this? And many times it's just something that we can go, oh, what if we do that instead? You know, the developer can adjust that complexity and we get to a solution that everyone's happy with. And that wouldn't come up if it hadn't been suggested. So it's my job as a developer not to be the rude guy that always says no, right? And I have apologized to Mel, I don't know how many times, of just like, I'm so sorry, I have to bring you the news that this is not doable. But, you know, we're getting better at that.
So this is a little bit of a flow on to that. So as a designer, I'll work with the team to find out what are our constraints and what are the things that we need to consider when we're building out some concepts and the eventual solution. What happens is I end up getting this whole host of constraints and that raises the bar higher and higher, and eventually I'll need to jump over that bar and I'll bend over backwards to make sure that I'm being a good designer and a good teammate and not like making Thiago cry in the corner thinking, why is Mel making me design this thing or develop this thing? So this is about like listening to the constraints and just listening to them as if they're gospel.
And that the same thing happens on the other side of the developer. So like, for example, if you get a wireframe or like even the actual designs, like a sketch file saying do this, and then as a developer, you just go ahead and do exactly that. You just go the pixel perfect. That's one example I like to use because some developers spend hours and hours to get like the one pixel to the left or to the right. And like, is it really worth it? I don't know. Sometimes it might be, but yeah, I don't think it is. Yeah. You're jumping ahead. Yeah. So it's usually not worth it. We're not saying, you know, don't do things in a professional way and polished way. We want to get there. But it's just that thing about taking what you're seeing as something that's set in stone and cannot change no matter what. So yeah, taking things too literally, not questioning. You end up doing a lot of unnecessary work. You slow your delivery. It's hell. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, so how do you overcome that? Well, again, it's about sharing and asking for the reasons why. So as a designer, it's important for me to share the reasons why I made the decisions that I did. And likewise, for me to ask the developer, like, why is this something that we need to design for? Is this really a strong constraint, or do we have some flexibility or adaptability here? And if I'm sharing the reasons why I'm trying to get around it, then maybe we'll find a new way to go forth. So it's really linked up to understanding what is crucial in that piece of work that you're doing.
Yeah, and that's all guided by the purpose of the team. So when, and again, it comes back to the benefits. So our team has been together for a few years now, and it has been relatively stable. So we really understand the problem that our customer is having, right? What are we trying to do? What benefits are we trying to bring to him or her? And that is the thing that we use when we're faced with details that are cast in stone and we somehow need to change that. So it's like, is this really crucial to delivering the objective that we have, or can I make it not pixel perfect, right? That's usually the answer there. And that enables us to do something that we put here as informed deviation. So you're deviating from the wireframe or the screen or the constraints that the developer puts on you, but you're doing that in an informed manner and you're involving the other person in the process. So that has worked for us. Now this one, so this is about like working in isolation, right? So that's me with the GIF there. So I have done that in the past, in the recent past, like last week. just writing up this entire piece of work and getting to Mel and saying, hey, I built this. Can you like improve the user experience here? You know, like just wave your magic wand or something. So you can see that that's not really the best way to go. There are reasons why that happened, but like we're not completely insane, just a little bit.
And on the other hand, I can go away and do all of my design work up front, and I'll be thinking about, oh, what about this scenario, that scenario? What if it rains? What if it's sunny and I need an umbrella still? Or what if I lose a wheel on my bicycle and now I've got a unicycle? Like, I'm just trying to cover all these sorts of scenarios. Working with the images here. So yeah, we try to cover a lot of scenarios sometimes up front and prepare as much as we can, and then go and talk to our teammates who are going to help us build out the solution. So working in isolation, a common pitfall of that is actually we end up over-preparing sometimes or over-engineering a solution, and that means wasted effort and clunky solutions. So how do we overcome it?
All right, so one thing that we try to do is working closely together, so not getting too far ahead. So it's very common that people do like, you work on all the designs first, and then the designs are handed over to the developer, and the developer makes it happen, right? And that's the best case scenario. More often than not, the designer will get that and say, oh, that's impossible, that doesn't work because of X, and it goes back, and it's just back and forth. So we try to work really close to each other, meaning Mel doesn't really build, like, doesn't really come up with 10 screenfuls of a user flow. She does like one little bit, and then I put that in code, and then we do another bit. And we're always trying to like walk together in the project at the same time. So like, to summarize this, it would be, there's no like handover stage where she's like, here you go, I'm bye, you know, good luck. That comes back to what we've been talking, which is, you know, include everyone, get their input. There's always that back and forth going on in a very rapid way. It's not like weeks, it's hours.
Yeah, and then I think that ties into attending things together. So as a team, we attend stand-ups, we do retros, and like Thiago touched on at the start of the talk, there are custom interviews that we have different people attending, not just designers or researchers, and that's really valuable for us so that we don't work in isolation and we work together continuously. And one of Thiago's favourite things is designer-developer pairing.
Yeah, so that one is a bit tricky. You need to like put some effort into making it happen, right? But one of my favorite things is sitting down with Mel, and we're both working on like some idea in code right there, right? There's no let's design it first and change it. It's just bringing all of that thing, like, can we even do this? What are the things like, oh, we're getting on that screen, but the user isn't really logged in yet. So the whole thing we thought won't really work. We need to put a login first. What if we just ditch the whole process? You know, like all of those things happen if you're sitting there in code. Otherwise, you have to do lots of analysis, and, you know, not even that is guaranteed. So we did that in Hack Days, and it worked, and we tried doing that in real life as well, and it's been working. But you need like specific conditions. So, you know, doing development takes time. So if you're hitting an endpoint, you need to create the backend for that endpoint. You know, you have to create that, and it might take time. So what we do is like fake that, just create a fake response, and like in the ideal world that will exist. And so like it's something that takes effort. It won't just happen like, come sit with me tomorrow and let's work, because the designer will probably fall asleep while you're like spinning up your environment. But if you do put the effort on it and you have like an environment that's fun to work, it'll just fly. And like, we see things, like we're looking at the same screen and seeing two completely different things. And like, I'm amazed constantly by like the things that Mel brings up, and I'm like, wow, I did not see that coming.
Wow.
You did not see this one coming.
No, I didn't. Yeah, so this is really about timing of work and communicating closely as well. So sometimes the designer will be a little bit ahead of the developer, but we're always together, going over the hurdles together. and we're all on the same track as well. And sometimes Thiago will be ahead of me, and that's fine as well. It's just about keeping that closeness and understanding where each other is at so that we can continue to work together and make progress together. So in the talk description, if anyone read it before they RSVP'd, maybe just love this meetup like I do as well, and just came along anyway. But we put the question in our summary, should designers code, should developers design? Why are we asking this question today? Does it help? We don't really think that's the questions that we should be asking. Does it matter if designers code? Does it matter if developers design? The real question is, how do we bridge the gap between designers and developers? That's the most important thing that we need to be working towards and finding the answers to.
So like some of the things we saw today, like let's go back to the points we pointed out and give slightly better versions of them according to what we do today that seems to work for us. So first of all, stereotype responsibly. So it's like you're a human being, you will stereotype, it happens. Know it's there and do it responsibly and be open to be surprised and amazed by someone's skills. Then openly discuss complexity. Just don't hold it in, and if you're a developer, if you're a designer who worked with a developer who shut down all your ideas in the past, you might be hurt. It might be hard for you to be vulnerable and open, but you really need to do it, right? And developers, please, be kind. We're working together. You want me to keep going? It's a good segue. Like, details are not set in stone. We didn't plan who would say what in this presentation. We left it for let's just see how it goes, right?
Yeah.
So, this is just the obvious one. Instead of making everything like gospel, just know that there's leeway. The other person's willing to talk. And working together instead of just doing that handover process. That really hurts. So try not to do that. And we do know that that's not always possible, right? And that's the thing about building the right environment for collaboration. So when we said all the way in the beginning that managers would get something out of this too, or if you're like organizing a development software process.
You might be a product manager as well. I think I know there are some product managers here tonight, and you would have the same observed experience, if not direct experience, that we've talked about. So it's all about building the right environment for collaboration. Like, if there's one thing to take away from tonight, it is that we need to continuously focus on that. It's like we said, we need to have a safe space to be able to do many of these things and overcome these pitfalls. And if that environment isn't created, then those pitfalls will just continue to carry on. And that means that you'll have maybe a slower production to build a solution, and maybe it's also going to be weaker because we haven't actually worked together and built that strong solution together. So build the right environment for collaboration, create a stronger solution together, and you'll also find that that will create happier teams. So it's not really about player one versus player two. It's about cooperating.